Hey Alottle family, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Cami Ewalt, and today I'm going to show you guys how to take a design and make a glitter burst out of it. So we are going to create this from the very bottom up, and if you are here for a glitter burst template tutorial, let's get into it. All right, so I have already measured out my 20-ounce skinny tumbler from Makerflow Crafts, and I am going to come over here to the drawing tools section, and I'm going to use the square, and I am not going to be using the entire tumbler for this glitter burst pattern. I'm going to be using the top about 2/3, and then the bottom third is going to be something else. You guys will have to tune in next week for that part of the tutorial, but I just draw out a square, and then I come up here where we can put in our custom measurements, and I know that I want the length to be 9.250, and then I'm going to tab over, and I know I want the height to be exactly 5 inches, and then I hit enter. We're going to come over here to the text panel, and we are going to type out our words. Thankful, and then I'm going to just select this, hit Alt, left click, and drag away to make an exact duplicate, and I'm going to do that one more time. So then I double click here, and I'm going to put grateful, and then here I'm going to put blessed. So we're going to come over here to the text style panel, open that up, and we're going to use the font Samantha Craft that I got from Creative Fabrica. And as if Creative Fabrica couldn't get any better, because they used to have like your first month for $1. Now they're offering your first month for free, and then it will only renew for $9 instead of the normal $29. So I will leave a link to that in the description if you guys want to take advantage of that. I'm going to change them to black so we can see them. And I'm just going to Alt left click and drag another set back on here so we can change these to these are going to be all caps forever. And we're going to change the font here in a second so they won't quite look so crazy. This one is going to be always. And then this one is going to be abundantly. So I'm going to left click and drag over all 3 of these words. And I'm going to be using the font Country, which is also from Creative Fabrica. You guys, they have like 5,000 fonts and graphics. It is crazy how much you can get away with. And I just realized I spelled that word wrong. Let's go back to these ones. So I know I want these to each be a font size of 91. And I also know that I want them to line up on this right side. So I'm going to come up here and go to Align Right. So then I also know that I want these words to be a font size of 26.44. And I've done this ahead of time just so that I didn't waste your guys' time with trying to get my sizing right. That usually takes me a little bit of time, about as long as trying to figure out what fonts I want. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to come down here to character spacing, and I'm going to drop this down to 85. So I'm going to try to make this F about the same height as the top of that H. I'm going to select the word grateful, and I'm going to move it, or shrink it, just a little bit here, because I know that I want to nestle in a pumpkin to the left of the word grateful to start the pumpkin part of our glitter burst. So same with this, I'm going to shrink the spacing down to 85, and then I'm going to kind of nestle this in here. And then I'm going to use my arrow keys to move the word blessed down just a little so that I leave them lined up on the right. Let's use these corner tabs and I'm going to bring it out to where this lines up with the outside of the T. And then I'm gonna move this back up, and then same thing here with abundantly. We're gonna bring it down, but we're also going to shrink that character spacing down to 85 so they all look the same. All right, so I really like that. I'm going to left click, drag over all of these words, and I'm going to click Alt, left click, and drag away to make myself an exact duplicate. That way, if we mess up somewhere, we don't have to like totally backtrack. We can just start over here. I am going to make sure all of these are selected. I want to come up here and weld these, and then I'm going to group all the pieces together that weren't touching. I now want to make this an object instead of a font. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to make this compound path. And then I'm going to left click, drag over both of these, and make sure that I am completely centered. So words are done. Let's move on to the pumpkins. I'm going to come up here, bring in our pumpkin image that is also from Creative Fabrica. I know that I'm not going to use this curly Q part of the design, so right away I'm going to just delete that. I'm going to left click and scroll over, make sure that I've got only the stem and the leaf selected, and I've got a little part here that I selected, so I'm going to hit Shift, left click, that's going to deselect that, and I think I've got all just the parts of the stem and the leaf. So then I'm going to come up and group that. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pick just a green. All right, so then for the rest of the pumpkin, left click and select all of it. I'm going to shift and left click to deselect this part that we've already done. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose just an orange, and then I'm going to come over here and group it. And then while this is still selected, I'm going to shift and left click that stem and leaf area to select it as well. And we're going to group that together as well. Okay, so now this image is ready for us to move forward. All right, so I know that I want 3 different size pumpkins here. One, I want to be 1 inch, so I'm going to make sure this pumpkin is selected. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to make sure our aspect ratio is clicked to lock. We want to make sure that when we put in the width, the height is automatically going to adjust. So I want this to be 1 inch, so 1.000, and I'm going to tab over. That's going to automatically create the right height for that aspect ratio, and I'm going to click enter. And then I'm just going to nestle that in there, and we'll fiddle with it again in a second. So I'm going to click Alt, left click, and drag away to create a exact replica. I know that I want one size pumpkin to now be 1.5 inches, so 1.500. Tab over, it automatically creates the right height, and hit enter. And then the last size, Alt, left click, pull away, and then come up here, and I know I want the last size pumpkin to be exactly 2 inches. Okay, so to create a seamless pattern, I think I want the big pumpkin up on top. Let's move this around. I am going to right click and flip horizontally, and I'm going to create this top section to have the stem actually come out on the other side. And then this one, I'm going to rotate just a little. Let's put that like that. I want to flip this horizontally as well and rotate that. Once I know exactly where I want it to be lined up on this side, I'm going to come over here to the line tools, pick draw a line, and I'm going to make a straight vertical line holding my shift key, my left click, and drag down. Let go of your left click first, and then your shift key, and then come back up and click your select tool. So then I'm going to make sure this line is on top. So I'm going to right click, push bring to front, and I'm going to bring this over until this top line here meets with the red mark of our template outline. I'm going to make sure that my 2 pumpkins are grouped together. I'm going to left click, drag over the pumpkin grouping and that line, and I don't want the outline of our template selected, so I'm going to hit shift, left click, and that deselects it. So now all that's selected is this pumpkin grouping and that line, that vertical line we just put in there. I'm then going to come over here to the modify panel, come up here, and I'm going to subtract. What that did is sliced a straight line all the way down through there. I'm now going to put these pieces, grab them all, and group them together. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these pieces, grab them all and group those together. I'm going to group both of the pumpkins together as well. So I'm going to hit Shift, left click, right click, group. And this is kind of tedious, but this is the way I have found to where I know it lines up exactly. I'm just going to hit my arrow key and scroll it all the way across the screen. So I have these outside parts of the pumpkin selected. I'm going to hit the right arrow key until we line up to the other side of the page. Now I can be assured that 100% when this edge wraps around my cup, these two pumpkins are going to line up seamlessly. So then I'm going to do the same thing and group these parts of the pumpkins. I accidentally grabbed the outside of this border. I'm going to Shift, left click to deselect, and then I'm going to right click, group. Same thing with these ones. Deselect, right click, group. All right, so your seamless part is now done. Now we just need to fill in all the rest of it. Alrighty, so I think that looks really good. Now on the final design, I do know that I want the wording to be kind of a gold champagne-ish color, and the coloring that you're doing on here is strictly going to be for reference for when you do your glitter burst. So I'm going to change that black now to kind of a yellowish, what I feel would be gold, just so I can keep myself straight as I move forward. So I'm going to left click, drag over all of this, and I don't want this border to be selected, so I'm going to Shift, left click, and deselect that. I'm going to click on right click on one of these and hit group. That's now going to be able to move all of these together. So now that that's all grouped together, we're going to, while it's selected, come over here to the offset panel, click offset, and it'll take a couple seconds because there's a lot of little intricate pieces here. And I know I want to increase the distance from 0.125 to 0.200. I'm going to hit apply. And then if I were to leave it just like this and change that coloring, you can see that we have these funky little holes that out here is going to be fine. That's the whole point of a burst. But I don't want these holes within this area of wording because I want this to be one solid block. So in order to get rid of those, let me back up here. I'm going to pull away the pumpkin and wording that we already had grouped. And if I right click on this, there's no option to ungroup it because it's one full piece. So in order to get rid of these, to isolate them enough to delete them, I have to come down and release compound path. That's going to free up all of this to be maneuvered or deleted how we want. I'm going to bring this back over here so I know which ones to delete. And I'm just going to select the ones that I want to delete and hit the delete key on my keyboard. I do want, I guess it's just going to be this one, but if there were another design to where there were actual closed in holes here, you do want those still to be holes so they can see the color that you're going to be putting behind this. So to do that, I'm going to drag over all of this and I'm going to deselect the wording and pumpkins that are already grouped together. And then I also want to deselect this frame. So Shift, left click again, and that's going to deselect those. I like to come down to the very bottom and right click right on that line and make this a compound path. That now makes this part of this outside offset all one piece again. So then I'm going to come up and I like to, as I'm going along, create the colors that I think I'm going to use on the cup. It just kind of helps keep me straight when I'm doing the offsets. So see how this is just one solid chunk, and I just think it makes it bold and stand out a little better. So then from here, you just create more offsets. So I'm gonna go ahead and just drag these out of the way for now. Click on this, select it, come up, and you can make them different distance offsets if you want. I just went with the same distance all the way through. So instead of 1.125, I'm gonna do 0.200, apply. And then while that one is still selected, I'm gonna click offset again, move the distance to 0.200, apply. And then while that's still selected, you can either go with another offset, or you can just know that when we have the border of this template, this is just going to be kind of a cutout part along with these here. So however you want to do it, I'll just go ahead and do one more offset so I can show you guys. Increase the distance to 0.200, apply. So now that we have all of our offsets done, let's clean it up. So I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and left click on each colored offset, and then also on a pumpkin, which is connected to the words and everything because those are already grouped. I'm going to come up here, I'm going to group those, and then I'm going to right click and send them to the back. What that's going to do is leave this red border here that we've been using as our border of our template up on top. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to come to the line tools, select draw a line. I'm going to hold the Shift key, left click, and drag down. That allows me to create a perfectly straight vertical line. And I'm going to let go of my left click first before my Shift key so it keeps that line straight up and down. I'm going to Alt, left click, drag away to create an exact duplicate. I know it's kind of hard to see maybe, but I'm going to bring this line here in to meet the side of that border of our template where we're going to cut off, because everything outside of this border I want to be cut off. It should make sense here in just a few minutes. While I've got this selected, this should be on the very top, but let's make sure and bring to front. And remember, all of this has to be grouped for this next part. So I'm going to left click, drag over, and I do not want this border to be selected. I'm going to go ahead and leave it the way it is. So I'm going to Shift, left click to deselect it. So now the only things that are selected are this vertical line and all of this color for our burst template. Come over here to the modify panel, and we're going to come up here and subtract. What I've done here is just sliced through this outside portion. So if I left click and drag and start selecting this, I can come up right to the very edge of that line of where our border is, select all of those and delete. And now we have a crisp edge to work with. And I'm going to do that for all of these other sides, and I will be right back. All right, so we have pretty much completed it. If you guys are selling on Etsy or a website or something like that, and you want to go a step further and make this more of a cut file for a client or customer or something like that, let me show you how to do that. So first of all, we want to make sure that all of our internal is grouped. So left click, drag over all of it, deselect that outside border, group it, and then I like to give myself kind of a safety net, just like I did with the words over here. So I'm going to Alt, left click, and drag away that inner part. And then I am going to right click, make this a compound path. So these are all individual cut lines. I want to make sure I get in this border with the rest of it. So I'm going to left click, drag over it all, and once again, make compound path. This is it. You can now list this on your website, on Etsy, wherever you sell your files. Or if you're just using it for personal use, this is ready to then send to your silhouette, cameo, whatever design or whatever cutter you have. If you guys have questions, please leave them in the comment. If this was a little too intricate and detailed and you need kind of a simpler design, let me know and I will be happy to do a different video on something like that. I'm so thankful you guys joined me today, and I will see you next week where we incorporate this design in with an entire design onto a tumbler. I'm super excited to show you guys what I have next. So I will see y'all next week. Have a good day. Bye-bye.